Today's project is to put these urethane spring pads in, and also to install a 1/2 inch lowering block in the right rear of the car. The right rear of the car is about a 1/2 inch higher than the rest of the car. I guess some of these cars are tweaked that way a little bit. Hopefully with the installation of this lowering block it'll level the car out all the way around. I went ahead and filled the block in with some epoxy. The reason I did that is I thought that if I left the block as it was, that once you put a lot of force on here it's going to start cutting into the pad, and I was concerned about that. So I filled it with epoxy and then sanded it out, and now when I get force on this, the filled part of the lowering block will press up against the urethane spring pad and it shouldn't cut into the pad. So that's why I did it. I had a concern about the open lowering block and I just didn't feel comfortable with it. I think in the future for the Trans Am, if I buy some lowering blocks for it, I'm going to look for a solid block. So next step, get under the car, get it jacked up, get it on jack stands, and I'll work one side at a time. Alright, we hit the floor jack under the rear end, lift the car up, get it up on jack stands. Then I'm going to try to put in the urethane spring pads and the lowering block without taking the wheels off. So we'll see how that goes. And since it's an automatic and it has a park, if I need to take them off, I can take them off with the car up in the air. Okay, we're gonna put this in as a piece. Hopefully I have enough vertical clearance to get it in over the small stud on the spring. No, we're gonna need more. There's a lot of friction there, and what I'm going to have to do is get the U-bolts in place and pull it together. You know, I was worried about with these rubber, well, you can see with the rubber here how it's kind of rounded out, and I was worried about that with the rear end moving around, but as stiff as that urethane is, and with that lowering block in place, I get this thing clamped down. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Well, I drilled out this lower retaining plate. Let's see if it'll fit. Yeah, looks like we can make that work. All right, now I think what I'm going to have to do is, before I put that lower spring pad in, I'm going to have to draw this together. So I'll do that, compress this, and then we'll put the lower spring pad in. Okay, so now we got the top spacer and the lowering block in, and we got it tightened up so it's pushed up in there and set pretty well. So now what I'll do is I'll back those nuts all the way off and take the plate off, and then we'll insert the lower spring pad, and then we'll bolt it back up, and hopefully it'll be a permanent install. Well, the right side's done. I have the lowering block in, I have the spring pads in. I used the 1/2-inch U-bolts with the nylon lock nuts on the bottom. And I used mechanical judgment for the tightness. Maybe I'll go ahead and look in for a torque spec, but they're installed. And you know, it seemed a lot more difficult than it should have been. It seems like a pretty straightforward process, but by the time I had to drill all the holes out for the 1/2-inch U-bolts and the urethane upper pad with the spacer in it, it was a tight fit, or I mean the lowering block, not the spacer, and getting that into the spring perch, that was a challenge. And if I were to do it again, I would put the rear end way up in the air, put the lowering block with the spring pad on the block, put that in place on the spring, and then lower the rear end down over the top of it. I think that would have been a lot easier. I think that would have went a lot better, but the way I did it, I struggled with it a bit. Eventually got it in, but it was a challenge. So that's what it looks like. Urethane spring pads, a little bit of bling back there, 1/2-inch U-bolts, pretty strong, a lot stronger than stock. So looks pretty good, and happy that's done. Got the 1/2-inch U-bolts in it, so we got some strength there, and the urethane pads. So if I ever decide to take this down the track in the future, I think I have a much more robust setup here for my springs and locating the springs. And over here, same thing. It's all set up, cinched down, and put the car back down. The spring pads and the 1/2-inch lowering block have been installed. I've put a couple hundred miles on the car since installing the parts, so everything's settled out. So go ahead and take a measurement and see where we're at. Okay, the right rear, 27 3/4. And this is the side with the 1/2-inch lowering block. And the right front, 27 1/2. And the left front, 27 5/8. And the left rear, well, just a little short of 27 3/4. So, I'd say that upgrade was pretty successful. Got the car flattened out. And we've got the spring pads in to replace the soft rubber pads. Got them torqued down to 40 foot-pounds. And I'd say that was a successful upgrade.